Good evening. Thank you for joining us today on the DC Faces Community Virtual Town Hall. My name is Steve Walker, Director of the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments, and it is my honor to serve as one of the staff members on the DC Faces Working Group. In a moment, you'll hear from the Working Group co-chairs, and more importantly, we're here to hear from you tonight. So if you have a question, please press 0 now, and you will be loaded into the queue, and we'll begin taking questions momentarily. We're also taking questions from Mayor Bowser's Twitter account, so please tweet us at Mayor Bowser and use the hashtag DCFaces. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Beverly Perry, Senior Advisor to the Mayor and DC Faces co-chair.
Good afternoon. I'm Beverly Perry, Senior Advisor to Mayor Bowser. And we all know this summer, the District of Columbia and the rest of the country were stunned by the death of George Floyd. Because of public outcry across the country, communities reflected on systemic racism, which has been ingrained in our culture through policies and expressions impacting African Americans and other groups of color. Last month, Mayor Bowser convened the District of Columbia Facilities and Commemorative Expressions Working Group, DCFACES, and charged it with evaluating names of DC government-owned facilities to ensure that persons after which DC assets are named deserve the worthiness of the honor. Our group will make this recommendation based on the namesake legacy and whether the person lived a life inconsistent with DC values and or whether they encouraged the oppression of African Americans and other communities of color, or contributed to systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, or any other form of discrimination. The working group has been hard at work for the past month. You will see, as reflected on the screen, the members of the working group, so please take note. Working group members represent agencies which have commemorative work or public spaces under review. In a moment, you will hear from my co-chair, who will provide a snapshot of some of the work to date. But I want to recognize and thank the team for their expeditious efforts. Now I will turn to my co-chair, Richard Reyes Gavilan, to walk us through the working group's charge and some results. For those on the call today, as Steve said, if you have not already done so, please press 0 now, and in a moment, we will begin taking your questions. Thank you. Richard.
Thank you, Senior Advisor Perry and Director Walker and the members of the working group. It's been a real pleasure working with you on this really important subject over the past several months. So very briefly, before we begin to hear from members of the public, I want to spend just a minute or two outlining what the DC Faces Working Group's charge is. As mentioned a second ago, we are reviewing both commemorative works and public spaces to ensure the namesake's legacy is consistent with DC values. A commemorative work means a statue, a monument, a sculpture, a streetscape or landscape feature, including a garden or a memorial grove, or other structure which is located on public space and which is designed specifically to perpetuate in a permanent manner the memory of an individual, group, event, or other significant element of international, national, or local culture or history. A public space means any public street, alley, circle, bridge, park, or building. And a building can be any public building, a school, a library, or other government space. I want to make certain to underscore that the working group will focus works and public spaces owned by or under the administrative control or jurisdiction of the District of Columbia. Of course, the District of Columbia is unique in that we are also the seat of the federal government. So the working group will send a report to the mayor that includes changes the district may implement and recommendations she may make to the federal government for further action. Next slide, please. So we're almost ready to hear from you. I want to take just a moment to recognize the efforts of the Engagement Committee led by David Jones and Terry Chenko. Thank you, David and Terry, for your great work in getting a lot of interest in the committee's work or the working group's work. I want to remind everyone who is on this call to continue visiting Mayor.dc.gov/DCFACES for updates and for working group products. We did launch a community survey, which to date has received over 2,500 responses from district residents in all 8 wards. And that's really a heartening number of responses considering everything else happening in the city and country right now. The survey is available in 7 languages: Amharic, Chinese, English, French, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And we encourage all residents to respond before the survey cutoff date, which is Monday, August 24th, 2020. So that's next Monday is when the survey will be, you'll no longer have an opportunity to participate in the survey. So we are ready to hear from you now. As mentioned before, if you have a question or a comment, please press 0 and you will be added to the queue. A couple of simple things. Just a reminder to keep your comment or question short so that we can get to hear from as many people as humanly possible. And what we want to hear from you, we want you to talk about, number one, what is your red line? Meaning, what issues are there, or is there an issue from a person's legacy that may or may not just disqualify him or her from an honor? Secondly, what district asset should be removed or renamed or possibly contextualized? And finally, which District of Columbia or national or international figure should be honored? With that, let's open up the town hall to resident participation. Again, when speaking, please be brief so we can hear from as many callers as possible. So, Steve, you want to take it over?
Great. Thanks very much, Rich. We'll open it up for questions in just a moment, but just a reminder for those of you on the call, if you got a question, please press 0 now and we'll add you to the queue. We're going to go to our first question. Sherry Austin, your line should be live, and please ask your question.
Oh, hello. I wanted to know, what are the DC values that are being considered as part of this exercise?
Sure. May I answer that?
Sure.
So last year, the Office of Planning, as part of the Comprehensive Plan Amendment process, defined DC values, and this is a public process, so this is publicly driven. We defined 6 values: accessibility, diversity, opportunity, prosperity, resilience, and equity. I don't believe those are weighted, but those were the 6 major values that came about this very public process in 2019. So we thank the Office of Planning for their work in helping create the values that we are looking at as we make our recommendations to the mayor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Next, we're going to take a question that was emailed to us. Can you please describe the process that will be used to rename high schools? For example, Wilson High School. So do either of the chairs want to answer that question?
Yes. Among the working group, there is a policy working group, and the policy working group has developed a policy for renaming facilities, assets, and there is a particular policy addressed just for schools, and that policy will be incorporated in our report among our recommendations to the mayor.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Michael Segal. So, Michael, your line should be live.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Quick thing. I live about 8 blocks from Lincoln Park, where the Emancipation statue stands. I've lived here for about 20 years. I didn't know until very recently, when the statue came under challenge, just what an important event took place there when that statue was commemorated with Frederick Douglass addressing the President of the United States. It's a shame because I've taken my kid there 100 times. I really wish we had some context so that every 6-year-old going to play in that playground knows that something important happened there about that statue. It's not really a question. That's just my desire to see some context there.
Just briefly, and I think it's really important, and this is part of what the working group is doing. It's not simply saying it should stay or it should go. There will be, I'm assuming, instances where the working group will recommend context because things are nuanced, as you suggest. So thank you for that comment, and please do visit the survey so we can have that. In the hard copy.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to go to Philip in Ward 8. Philip, your line should be live.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Pinnell. I am a Ward 8 resident. I would like to know why the district government still uses the name Barry Farm. James Barry was an owner of slaves, and Barry Farm was a plantation. The people who lived in that area back in the 1870s asked that the name be changed, and at the behest of Frederick Douglass and Solomon Brown, the then D.C. Legislative Assembly officially changed the name to Hillsdale. That's why that neighborhood today is called Hillsdale, and the Civic Association is the Hillsdale Civic Association. Why does the district government continue to use the term Barry Farm?
Philip, you will be happy to know that that's exactly what this working group is charged to do, is to identify those areas that have those names, and Barry Farms is on the list of the names that we have identified.
Great, thank you very much for that question, Phil, and I'll just use this as an opportunity to remind everyone who's watching, if you haven't already done so, go to Mayor.dc.gov/DCFACES and take the survey to allow us to continue to get information from the residents about recommendations and ideas, just like Philip just shared. So thanks very much for sharing that. We're now going to go to Chris from Ward 6. Chris, your line should be live.
Hi, my name is Chris Williams. I live in Southwest D.C., which is Ward 6. I was wondering if you would consider areas that are being acutely impacted by gentrification. These types of monuments would really help, particularly the emotional aspect of displacement. So there are many different forms of displacement. We're all familiar with physical, but there's also social, psychological, emotional, and these types of monuments will go a really, really long way. Here in Southwest, this has been the home of former Justice Thurgood Marshall, Dorothy Height, and has been the site of many historical events such as the Pearl Incident, and as well as a route on the Underground Railroad. So my ask, and on behalf of the coalition, Southwest DC Action, we put together a report asking for these type of monuments, if possible, be prioritized for these types of areas.
Okay, so are you requesting a monument to be placed in your area? To just be clear?
Yes, yes, but I guess the broader question is one around priority and whether or not areas that are experiencing acute changes in community identity could perhaps be prioritized in terms of location. That was sort of the ask. But yes, we are asking for memorials to the Pearl incident. There is a memorial in Alexandria to the Edmondson sisters who participated in the Pearl incident, which is the largest nonviolent escape of enslaved persons right here at 6th Street Wharf in Southwest.
Okay, well, that's good information. We will have to incorporate that in our report that your area is requesting to have more reflections of our historic personalities that we know that are consistent with DC values. So thank you for calling.
Thank you very much for your question. We're going to go to an email question that came to our email address, DCFACES@dc.gov. Will the mayor be able to change the name of federally owned properties?
I think
No.
the answer to that question is simply no. The mayor will not be able to change the name of federally owned properties or facilities. However, the federal government has a process by which you can request a name change. And of course, you know, our Congresswoman can always introduce legislation to change names, and she has in the past. So can the mayor do it? No, but the mayor can initiate the action. So if there are federal properties that people would like for the mayor to initiate actions, please let's make note of those.
Great, thank you very much. Our next question is from Don. Don, go ahead, your line is live.
Hi, I have two questions. My initial question is that the moderator was talking about slides, and there was only a phone call to dial into, so I didn't know if there was a visual that I was missing and or if slides would be provided later. And then my second question is, I was wondering if the working group has already comprised an initial list of facilities that they're looking to evaluate. Thank you.
Steve, do you want to answer the first question?
Sure, the first question, hopefully all the callers who are online now, you can tune into DC Channel 16, where we're live on the air now. You can also follow us on the mayor's social media campaigns. If you look at Mayor Bowser on Twitter, you will be able to see the event live as well. And it will replay on the DC network.
And the slides will be reflected on the screen. And
in terms of, go ahead, Ms. Ferry.
No, go ahead.
In terms of your second question, Dawn, the working group, specifically the research committee, has done a yeoman's job of putting together the names and assets that the district owns. We still have a little bit more work to do around streets and place names, but a large majority of the assets and the names and the problematic names have been identified already.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to go to another email question. Can you please explain how residents across the district have an opportunity to share their thoughts, ideas, and suggestions?
Sure, we continue to encourage people to fill out the survey, and the survey is not in front of me right now, but Steve, can you share again the survey location?
Absolutely. It's at Mayor.dc.gov/DCFACES, where you will be able to take a link and take the survey, which I might mention is available in 7 different languages, so we want to make sure that residents across the district are able to respond. We're going to go to Ben in Ward 6.
Oh, thanks for taking the call. I'm just following up actually on what the gentleman just a moment ago asked about an opportunity to commemorate some of the history in Southwest DC. But it's simply whether, in addition to what was suggested, whether or not a large wall mural is a possibility. And if this isn't the right call for that, I'm just curious. You know, it's a mural that sort of depicts some of the famous people that lived in Southwest over the years: Thurgood Marshall, Dorothy Heights, etc.
Sir, I think this is the right call that you're making. And again, we encourage you to go to the survey and enter what you just told us. The names, we may not have a space identified at the moment, but we are really interested in hearing about some of the individuals who may be underrepresented or may not be represented at all, who could be on monuments or the names of buildings, provided that they do reflect DC values. So thank you for sharing those names. And again, I encourage you to go to the Mayor.dc.gov/DC values site, and DC Faces site, and enter those names there as part of your suggestion.
Great. Thank you very much for that question. We still have time for a few more questions. So if you have a question, please press 0 now and you'll be added to the queue. Our next question is from Commissioner Sandra Phillips. Your line is live.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sandra Phillips Gilbert. I'm an ANC commissioner in 6807. Some years back, the R.L. Christian Library kiosk and the John Mercer Langston kiosk, which both were located on H and Benning Road, we lost that to development and the new trolley car. So I, and along with the community, went before the library trustees to see if their names could be added to the new Rosedale Library. What they did was they created some small index card size plaques with their names. I would like to see their names added to the library. R.L. Christian was a mentor, a great educator in the H Street area, and John Mercer Langston was one of the first black elected officials and the creator of the Howard University Law School, and he had a number of other things. And to see that legacy disappear and their names not acknowledged is a loss to our children and to the city. So I would like to see if somehow they can place those names on the Rosedale Library.
Was she cut off?
Did we lose Sandra?
Yeah, I think we lost her. If you want to respond to the question, either chair.
Sure. I think I can respond since I'm pretty familiar with that request. Thank you, Sandra, for calling in. And we certainly do have a plaque at the Rosedale Library. We might disagree on the size of that plaque. That said, I think it's still important, despite the fact that the library trustees do have a policy around naming libraries. One of the things that DC Faces is trying to do is help standardize the way different agencies, even independent agencies like the library, might make their decisions. So rest assured that if you make that comment in the survey, we will take a look at that from a more sort of global perspective, and we're happy to follow up with you once again around Rosedale and around other policies and procedures for the library.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Reverend George Gilbert. Your line is now open.
Hi, wanted to ask what extent of the outreach in our communities that you guys are doing to make sure that everyone is informed and has an opportunity to be a part of this historical occasion that will really be visualized for future generations.
Well, Reverend Gilbert, as we noted earlier, this part of the working group is to identify facilities and assets that are named after people that we feel that are not did not live their lives in a way that's consistent with DC values. This is not a renaming process in this particular process, but we are establishing procedures. Now, the procedure for renaming assets, like for example, for renaming a school, it is a public process that's incorporated in those procedures to rename a school. And we are recommending, as the co-chair said, who is the head of the libraries, we're recommending a similar process for libraries and other assets and other independent agencies that have been naming their facilities as well. So we appreciate your comment. There will be, this town hall is one of our ways of alerting the public that this process is ongoing, but there will be a separate process for every facility that a name change is entertained to be made.
Great, thank you very much for that question. Our next question is from Travis Swanson. Travis, please ask your question.
Hi, my name is Travis. I live in Ward 7, and I just have a question about the process of renaming neighborhoods. That there's a lot of neighborhoods in DC that are named after people who do not align with DC values. And I know, unlike schools and street names and things, neighborhoods aren't really established in law. So it's not just like an act of the council can change a neighborhood name. And I feel like you need a lot of buy-in from the people in that community to do that. And since my neighborhood is currently reckoning with something like this right now, I was curious if you had any suggestions for us at my civic association for how we could approach something like this if we do wish to rename our neighborhood.
Travis, it's almost as if you've been part of the working group. We've been struggling with this ourselves, and as you mentioned, renaming a neighborhood, there's no statute, there's no policy anywhere that dictates how one may go about changing the name of a neighborhood. And you know, neighborhoods come and the neighborhoods go. We look at something like Noma, which is all of a sudden a neighborhood, but wasn't a neighborhood maybe 10 years ago or longer. We are making note of the fact that there are some problematic names associated with neighborhoods, but we do not have a recommendation at this point about what can or should be done about that. It's possible that this might be something where we will sort of recommend contextualization by maybe further outreach so that residents understand what the neighborhood is named, who the neighborhood is named after, and why that might be problematic. But there will be something in our report, but I don't think it will go as far as recommending changes at this point.
And as we said earlier, the jurisdiction for the government is over government facilities. And neighborhoods, a lot of, the streets or park may be a government asset, but when you get into like my neighborhood, there is nothing there that's government owned. So it makes it more challenging when the government doesn't really have an ownership of the neighborhood. But I'm certain that council members can work with you on that.
Great, thank you very much. And our final question will come from Mary Belcher. Mary, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for hosting this forum. My name is Mary Belcher. I live in Adams Morgan, and for 16 years I've been a volunteer and activist working with academicians and descendants to preserve and protect Mount Zion, or rather Mount Pleasant Plains Cemetery at Walter Pierce Park, where 8,428 people were buried after the Civil War, mostly African Americans. I would like to recommend that the panel considers the disappearance of black cemeteries generally from DC. And since Walter Pierce is a city-owned park, I'd just like to put in a plug for a project that has come to a dead stall, no pun intended, at Walter Pierce Park. The descendants of folks buried there have made a very modest proposal for commemoration pavilion called the Ancestors Pavilion, we've been trying to work with DPR for 2 years on this, and we come in line after things like dog park fountains and sliding boards, and we keep getting pushed to the back of the line. Since you all are just taking a deep dive into the need for commemoration and contextualization, I would like you to address the need to recognize sites like Walter Pierce Park.
So noted. I will make sure that it is included in our notes, and it would be even more helpful to make sure, in case I lose my notes, if you would note that in the survey, if you go online and note that in the survey, so we will have a permanent record of that. So we will note that. Thank you very much for calling. So again, I want to thank all of our participants today, especially for calling in and expressing thoughts, some that we have entertained before and some that we heard for the first time. So I will ask you again to please visit Mayor.dc.gov to complete the survey and see the working group's updates. If you have any additional questions, please email DCFACES@dc.gov. And thank you again for participating this evening, and have a good evening.